Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Austin Clark here, host of the Multiply You podcast. Thanks for joining us. This is a place and a space where I interview top leaders in business and experts in their space. Today, I've got my good friend, Dr. Jeremy Weiss of Rise 25. He's done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs or CEOs. And today we're switching seats and flipping the script, and he is going to interview me. Jeremy, thank you so much. Happy to have you on the show.
Austin, I'm excited because today's topic is especially important for anyone, really, especially people who are busy. It's going to be about time, owning your time. And you're going to walk through some of the things you've learned, the systems you put in place to be better about time and owning your time. And before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. If you know Austin and his team, they do amazing things. And one of the big focuses for Austin is their team buying other pest control businesses. So if you know someone, if you are someone who has a pest control business with maybe, let's say, 3 or more trucks on the road, really respectable brand, they and Austin would love to talk to you. And these are people who thought, Austin, you would say this, they weren't even thinking of selling and they weren't interested in selling, but they never thought they could sell their company for what they paid for it and also living a great life in the same respect. So if you do know someone or you are someone, you can go to email them at aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com or text them directly 480-254-9730 and make sure to email him and not the national team because he won't get it. So email him directly. So Austin, let's talk about time. And I thought we'd start the conversation on time with something that's relatable, something that is demonstrating you working 60, 80, 100 hours a week. What were you doing? And then we could talk about how it affected you personally, your personal life. So what are some of the things, what do you remember those, the 80, 90, 100-hour weeks and what you were doing?
Yeah. They don't go away, meaning they're hard to forget, right? If you've done something like that over a period of time, those aren't experiences or times that you forget too quickly. And, frankly, I'd like to say that they're all gone and I'm working only 20 hours a week and making $5 million a day. But it's just not the case. And so to avoid also being hypocritical, I still today work a tremendous amount of hours, but they're hours that I want to put in most of the time. And I think over the years, I've been able to hone, as people do when they're, becoming more focused on something. I've been able to hone in a little bit more on what those activities are that are the very most important. In fact, we were talking the other day, Jeremy, and you really helped me where you said something that I thought was important that would be good to record here. And often in my organization at Moxie, we talk a lot about, the $10 an hour jobs, the $20 an hour jobs, the $50 an hour jobs. And our conversation was along those same lines. What are the $10,000 an hour jobs that a CEO or owner of a company ought to be focusing on? And one of the things that we talked about that was really impactful and a really great visual was simply make a list of those things. And so back to your original question, in the early days, when you open a company and make the decision to be an entrepreneur or a business owner, guess what? You are the bookkeeper, you are the receptionist, you're the salesperson, you are the marketer, you are doing all of it. And it was no exception for me. I had some different experiences, I guess, and our model is a little bit different that, we had some resources to be able to bring immediately to the table to kind of put teams together and generate revenue quickly. But you are doing it all. And so I think that it's just important that we are conscientious of the tasks and things that we're doing each and every day. So in the early days, I was doing a lot of those things that I mentioned. I mean, I would be making collection calls if customers fell behind on their bills. I would hop on sales calls all of the time and close deals down. I would spend time talking with customers that we had let down or that were upset, and listen to them and look to retain them, and make reparation or things right if we had fallen short, and resolve to make a commitment to do better then and now, and to serve them to the best of our abilities in the future. A lot of other really boring stuff as it relates to insurance or compliance, and paperwork, hiring, onboarding, those sorts of things. But um, you know, coding receipts right with the proper chart of account, and making sure that the finances and financials are accurate and look good. And so a lot of those kinds of tasks, I don't do a lot of those things anymore. But there's other things that I do that are just as unimportant today as they were then, because of some of the other things that I could or should be doing that are much more important. And we'll probably talk about some of those things too. But yeah, those were in the early days some of the things that I was doing that I had to per se at the time, but maybe I shouldn't have, because there were other things that were $50 an hour type jobs or $100 an hour type jobs to focus on.
No, I love that as a framework, because in the beginning, you're doing certain things and there's a shift. So you may, people out there may be working, the same amount of hours because you want to work on the same amount of hours, but also on the higher level tasks that move more of the needle in the business when you're working on those. So in the beginning, they were more maybe the $10, $20, $50 an hour tasks that you may be doing collection calls, you may be doing a service call, you may be doing different things. And now it's shifted more towards a larger percentage of maybe $1,000 an hour tasks, $10,000 an hour tasks. And so what would you consider that now that when you shift your time to those, all of them are important. They're just things that you have a special skill set to do. What are those higher leverage tasks that you work on now as you shift your time?
Yeah, so CEOs ought to be spending their time on really three main things: the vision of the company, and constantly painting that picture and reinforcing it with people that are inside of the organization. Next is to grow it via marketing, right? And so creating more jobs, creating more customers, growing the top line, also simultaneously improving the bottom line as well. And then finally strategy. And so, we have this big, beautiful picture of the vision of where we want to go and where we want to be. We want to be growing the company. And then how strategically do we do that? What does that look like? What does the company look like in a month from now, in a quarter from now, in a year from now? And of course, there's other things that creep in there and get in the way. But entrepreneurs, owners of businesses, CEOs ought to be focusing on vision and strategy and growing the company.
There's a couple things too, and I kind of want to talk about this. So, as you shifted from doing certain tasks that you started to delegate to higher level CEO tasks, there are certain things that you did to get there. You put some boundaries in place, you put systems in place, you put delegation automation in place, and you put time blocking in place. And one of the things you said before we hit record, which I thought was interesting, is you said, when you work on systems, if you could save collectively 50 staff members 5 minutes a day, that's a lot of time, right? As a CEO. So I'd like to start with systems. And some of the most important ones that we had talked about were collections and payroll. So what are some of the ways you've been able to put systems in place to help you in your team with their time?
Yeah. And so I'll specifically speak to those two things, payroll being the first. And so years ago when we started, the technology just didn't exist. And it's not like I'm 100 years old either, or the company is. I mean, I'm 36, and the Moxie branch in Phoenix has been around for 10 years. And at that time, I mean, we were actually still doing like time cards. We were still punching in. And that's not as archaic as it sounds, even today in 2021. But that's the way that we were doing that. And so we literally bought time cards and a time card machine. It's just so crazy to even think about right now because of the way that we do it today. And then, so employees would have to do that. Sometimes they would forget. And so that there's then adjustments to be made. And then someone like an assistant or me starting out would then have to, you know what I mean? Calculate all of that, differentiate between what was overtime, what was regular time. I mean, time in, time out for lunches, right? Do auditing. And so you can just imagine doing that for one person is crazy. What about doing that for 35 people or 55 people or 100? You know what I mean? I mean, that's a full-time job. And if you're me and work as slowly as I do, that's like a 10-person job if you have 10 Austins doing it. And so we said, hey, this is crazy, right? And it didn't go straight from that to the platform Zenefits that we use now. But we then built an Excel sheet and a calculator. And then I delegated that to someone that wasn't me, that could do it faster than me and more accurately than me. And I guess the other thing that I would say too is that it is a really scary thing to let go of something that you own and control, if that's not your disposition. And most entrepreneurs or CEOs, they're in those roles for a reason. It's because relinquishing control is not a part of who they are. It's against their very nature. And so it's very difficult and very challenging. Fast forward 10 years, we use a really wonderful platform. It's called Zenefits. And Zenefits is a fully integrated, not just payroll platform, but human resources or human capital management platform. And so that's a tool that we use. And they've not quite been around for 10 years. They've certainly improved and worked some kinks out, but you can do payroll through it. You can do onboarding through it. You can do offboarding through it. You can do holiday type things through it. Anything that relates or has to do with people. And so payroll is a piece, and we've been using them, I think, for 7 or so years now. But it's really nice. It puts all of the responsibility onto the employee to clock in, clock out sort of thing, tabulates it all for you. It pushes it from time and attendance into payroll, and then you can simply just audit it very, very quickly. And so with 10 times more employees, it takes me, if you will, and it's not me, it's someone else, but probably 2 hours twice a month with 10 times the amount of employees. It takes probably 75% less time. And so there's that. That's one of the things that we did. We employed technology. We built a system and process around it. And that is an instance that saved me time to be able to focus on other things. What was the second thing we were going to talk about, Jeremy?
Oh yeah,
payroll.
So the payroll, and then the second is collections. But I want to stick on the payroll for a second. But
sure, yeah.
Just to say, look at your current systems. What can you be using? With software or automation, because software, you still have some human overlaid with that, but it saves tons of time when you look at the different ways that you can make it more efficient and even a better process than more accurate process. So that is with the payroll side of things, which you put a real system in place that saves a ton of time and accuracy. The collection side.
So back in the day, and if anyone listening, and most of you do own a company, you have customers. Those customers, get invoiced. Great customers pay their bills and pay them quickly. Sometimes they don't. And there's a lot of different reasons that customers won't or don't pay bills. And so the first thing you ought to do is find out why. And if there's anything that can be improved on your end, then improve it so that you can get your cash faster to then reinvest it and grow the company. But we used to call, literally have someone call. I've done thousands of these calls, but as customers would either fall behind on their bills or forget or whatever else, we would call to say, hey, Jeremy, it's Austin from Moxie. I just wanted to give you a very friendly reminder that you've got an open invoice on your account. It's 30 days or 60 days or whatever days past due. And if you could give us a ring back or take care of that through the portal, we'd really, really appreciate it. This is the number, and we would look out for that payment. So now it's just all automated. And think about it. Think about being a customer, right? Sometimes I'll get automated triggers as a customer of a variety of different places. When I fall in behind on a bill, and I really appreciate that. I'm not looking to not pay anybody. I want to pay my bills personally and professionally. But sometimes the card has expired, or there's been fraud, and so your card's been shut down, or a variety of different reasons. Sometimes you just forget about it. And so you don't, as a consumer, want to spend time that you may or may not have taking that call, and you know what I mean? And on the business end or on our end too, we don't necessarily want to invest the resources in our people to be able to do that. And so now it's automated. We can set a recorded message that sounds good, and we can set triggers up in the software that we use, Pest, which is really, really great. And there's a lot of great softwares out there to be able to, and then you set rules up to be able to say, hey, if a customer has this X amount of a balance or above, and it becomes 30 days or whatever, then we want this series of events to happen, whether it's a text or a phone call or an email. And so now with 10 times more customers, we dedicate almost no human resources to our accounts receivable or our invoices that are outstanding. And I'm very proud to be able to report that, I mean, our accounts receivable, as far as like average days that accounts are receivable, it's like 5 times less than the industry average. It's incredible. And so we get to the customers quickly and service them. We bill them quickly, and we're very grateful for our customers that pay their bills quickly so that we can then, like I said earlier, take that money and reinvest it to be able to grow the company. And, we're having good luck doing that.
Talking about systems for a second, and you kind of got into the next topic, which is the delegation and automation piece of things, because part of it is creating a system. And I know part of the collection system you set, though, going back a little bit, is I know in a previous episode that we talked about, someone wanted to pay you via check. And so there's certain things that goes back to your system. Well, that's just not how you do things, right? And the reason you are able to do that is because of the system. It's not even a software, it's just a policy that you have. You want to talk about that policy a little bit, because that also relates to the system works the way it does because of the policy.
Yeah. And so we've talked about this in past episodes, but it's having confidence in who you are in the marketplace, and then identifying who your ideal customer or customers are, and then being very confident and unapologetic in going there and going after that piece and part of the market. So, like, let me ask you this, Jeremy, when was the last time you bought something on Amazon and you wrote a check for it? Or when was the last time you paid cash for your Netflix bill, right? And so what's the answer, by the way?
I don't even know where my checkbook is, Austin.
Thank you. Yeah, it's 2021. What's a checkbook, right? And so, I mean, certainly things have marched on forward technologically the last decade. They'll continue to do that the next decade, but it's just becoming more and more and more acceptable to not use cash, not use checks, because that's kind of crazy, right? I mean, very soon we'll be paying for all of our expenses with Dogecoin, right, or Bitcoin, or whatever it is. But we've just said, hey, it's just not something that we do. We deal with credit cards or debit cards or auto drafts because it's safer, it's more secure, it's easier, and that's what we're looking to do. Now, we still have some customers, a very small percent from the early days, that pay with check or cash or whatever else. But you just think about the problems that presents, right? I mean, if my director of operations, he was in business banking for a long time before being here at Moxie. And I mean, if someone said they lost a check, I mean, he would tell them, yeah, and bankers do this, like, yeah, close your bank account because it's out there and it has your routing number and your bank number and your address and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, credit cards come and go every month. You know what I mean? And it's really, really easy to be able to, and consumer friendly, to be able to either charge things back or report fraud, or, I mean, you can cancel a credit card today and have one in your mailbox by tonight. You know what I mean? And so it just facilitates the exchange and transfer of money a lot quicker, which is a great thing for the consumer and for the business. So I think we were getting on to, was that helpful or was that good?
Yeah, I know that's yeah. I just wanted to highlight there's a lot that goes into the system, itself. And when we're talking about time and owning your time, it's putting in the systems that allow you to take back your time and your team's time. And I want to get into some of the delegation automation, but is there anything important that we should mention about systems before we move to the next piece of the delegation automation?
I would probably just simply say is like, look, what is my return going to be on this? Technology is such a wonderful thing. And I also don't want to discount, we still use the phone heavily. We believe it's underused. It's a very, very powerful tool. But yeah, look to be able to get a return on your time to take your time back and your team's time back by employing or deploying different pieces of technology. And so it's important that you clearly know what problem it is you're looking to be able to solve. Don't get sidetracked along the way. Look to solve that problem, and often it can be for example, I mean, it's just a really easy calculation. I mean, for me doing payroll back in the day, what was my hourly rate, or what was I being paid? And then how many hours was it taking? And then what does it cost to be able to use this software? And how much faster is it? And you usually can see an immediate return, and it's cleaner and simpler and more effective. And, a lot of the times too, with like human capital management type software or resources, is it eliminates a lot of questions from employees to you or an HR person, because they can access the information, or they can go ahead and change their address of where they want their check sent to, or the bank account of where they want their money direct deposited, without even consulting you or talking to you. They can just make those changes on their own, change their tax withholdings, right? Whatever it might be.
Yeah. So when owning your time, we talk about, you can delegate it, right? Which is when we talk about that shift. So that shift from doing certain tasks to other tasks, you can delegate it. You can start to automate it, like you mentioned with the payroll, or you can eliminate it, like altogether. Like, this isn't a function that we need. And some of that way you can do that is with different automation or software. And you mentioned the payroll software, and you also mentioned a little bit about you switched to Pest routes, and you want to talk about what were the things and why you ended up switching, because I think it's would be interesting to hear from the systems and automation standpoint.
Yeah. And that's been a really, especially currently, kind of an interesting thing. So Jared Green is the founder of Pest Routes. He was on the podcast a couple of months ago. In fact, I think, or several weeks ago, I think that his episode just dropped, which is kind of neat. We also had David Giannetto on, who is the CEO of WorkWave. WorkWave owns Pest. And in some of our conversations, David's a really great guy, really genuine guy, really passionate about what he's doing right now. He acknowledged that it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows at the software company years ago before he was even involved. He's certainly made a lot of strides to improve it. But for us, it was painful enough or too bulky or clunky enough that we said, hey, we need to make a change. The software isn't doing what we need it to do. Tickets are open longer than we feel is acceptable. There's things that are affecting our employees or our customers. And so we would look to be able to solve these problems in a different way. And so we made that switch. And we've always had a really neat, the Moxie partnership. We've always had a really neat, close relationship with Jared Green, and he's been a wonderful friend and advocate for us, and has been super helpful. But there are lots of home service software companies that are out there that do really, really cool, amazing things. And if I'm being fair, WorkWave and Pestback has made really great strides. In fact, I didn't even know that they were getting into different segments like either HVAC or plumbing or pools or electrical. And so anyway, those were some of the things that led us to make that decision. But we're constantly looking, we're not looking to switch away from what we're doing right now. It's working and working really well, but we're always on the lookout for not the next best thing, but something that could help us to be able to serve our customers faster and communicate more clearly with them.
I think, Austin, what would be interesting here is, because it's software agnostic, to talk about what were the pain points you were looking to solve with software. Right. Because then software is always changing. There's new software all the time. Actually, I just did another episode with someone about software and tools, and those change, but the reasons why you use them won't really change. So what were the pain points you were trying to solve with the software?
Yeah. We wanted to be able to have customizable frequencies. And that wasn't an option at the time with where we were. Frequencies for customers. We wanted to be able to automate and set up triggers. We wanted to be able to have dynamic routing and scheduling. Anyone that's in the home service space knows that you don't get paid when you're driving. And so minimizing travel time and having your service people on the job, if you will, doing the work, that's the only time you're getting paid, is when you're, doing billable type hours and things. The reporting was pretty clunky. It wasn't able to generate the custom reports at the time that we needed or that we felt that we wanted to make good decisions for our business. And then finally, and perhaps one of the biggest things is also it wasn't a very easy platform for employees to use. It was complicated, and it was easy to get lost in it, and easy for employees to make mistakes inside of it as well.
Got it. No, that's helpful, because just knowing the pain points you were trying to solve really kind of goes back to why is someone trying to automate something. It really goes back to the function and the need that they're trying to serve. So we talked about systems, we talked about delegation, we talked about automation. The last thing I want to talk about is time blocking. You're a big proponent of time blocking. So talk to people what that is and how do you use it?
Yeah. Anytime I'm feeling overwhelmed or I feel like I want to say, oh, I don't have time for that. First, that doesn't make sense, right? Like the phrase, I don't have time. It just doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all. We all have the same time. It's 24 hours in a day. And so it's really just how we're using that time, right? And hopefully we're using it wisely. So I just do a simple exercise when I'm feeling that way. I have basically a blank sheet of paper. And for 3 days, from when I get up, 4:30 or 5 in the morning, to when I go to bed, 10:30 or whatever time at night, I just record the three main activities that I did for every hour, not in great detail. But for example, if I worked on payroll and had a conversation with Bob and did receipts in this hour block, then I would record that. If I did a session with Jeremy, then I would say, did a session with Jeremy, right? For an hour and a half. And it's amazing to me when I do that, the blank space that I find in my calendar. The first natural tendency that I have is I try to put as many things in there as I can to make myself feel good to myself about being busy. But it's not about being busy. It's about being focused on the things that move the needle the very most. And so that's the first exercise that I do, is find out where I'm spending my time, and then determining what can be eliminated, what can be delegated, or what could possibly be automated. And then time blocking is simply it's exactly like it sounds, blocking time out in your day and in your calendar. And so anyone that's listening, I would definitely challenge you that if you haven't ever or recently worked from home, if you don't do that, or go work from a quiet place, turn your phone off or turn your notifications off, I think that you would be shocked at the amount of work that you could get done, or tasks that you could get done in a 2 to 4 hour block that's uninterrupted. And I promise you, anyone that texts you in that time, those text messages will still be there when you turn your notifications back on. Anyone that called you in that time frame, if it was important, they left you a voicemail. And then also anyone that emailed you, I also promise you, like your text messages, those emails that you received during that time, they'll still be in your email box. And so shut it down for 2 to 4 hours. If that sounds intimidating, do it for an hour, one time a week, and then do it for an additional hour twice a week. And again, just the things that you can get done uninterrupted are remarkable. You know, we hear the phrase a lot, oh my goodness, she is such a great multitasker. He is so amazing at multitasking. It actually isn't really a thing. It's impossible for your brain to focus on two things at once. And so when we say she is such a great multitasker, she's not necessarily. It means that she is able to jump from one activity to another activity to another activity very, very quickly. And it's inefficient. And so focus on one thing at a time. Choose the things that are the most important first. Focus on those and finish that task until it's finished, and then move on to the next most important thing in your day. And I would also love to hear about it. I mean, email me, text me, reach out to me, but I love to be able to hear about kind of how that exercise goes for you. Every time I do it, I think, why didn't I do this earlier? Why don't I do this more often? And it's pretty remarkable what you can accomplish in a block like that.
You know, the last question, Austin, and I want to point out and highlight a few things you said, but is if there's any resources, people, books on productivity or time that you like and respect, I'd love to hear it. But just to highlight, I love what you said is an action step for people to list everything, list what you did that day and look on it and see, can I eliminate certain things? Can I delegate certain things? Can I automate certain things? And I had someone that I know, Austin, who hired someone for the day to sit next to them. And because they're like, I don't know if I'm going to be accurate, sit next to them and actually recorded everything they did for that day. So they actually had someone just write it all out. So they delegated the part about listing everything, which I thought was really interesting. But I love what you said there. So, take that action step and just document it out. And then the second, you said about the time blocking, and the key is without distractions, right? So that you can get the work done and be more productive in general. So, Austin, final thoughts on, I don't know, people, resources, books, on about productivity or time?
Yeah, I think my all-time favorite is probably Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's so many books, blogs, articles, podcasts out there on this subject, productivity. I just think that Covey says it better than anybody, in my opinion. He has the if you will 4 quadrants. Diagram, right? Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, that kind of thing. And essentially the two that I guess like matter, if you will, Q1 or quadrant 1 are things that are important and or I'm sorry, they're unimportant, but they're urgent. So literally just right now, I thought I turned my notifications off, but I had 2 phone calls from the same person come in. I don't know what it was about, but I know that it's not as important as this is right now for me. You know what I mean? And so there are things like phone calls, text messages, whatever. Quadrant 2 is things that are not urgent. It's why they're the easiest to not do and procrastinate, but are really, really important, like marketing, like team building, like sales, like Revit, you know what I mean? Those sorts of things. And so Covey's great. For a decade, I've used a planner or a calendar, if you will. And, the exercise of kind of identifying your roles, either as a husband, a business owner, a community member, whatever, you can look to see what those roles are and then plan your week, month, quarter accordingly to make sure that your most important roles you've carved out time to improve there or be productive there. So the other thing, and you kind of said it, but there's someone in my organization that every single day I send 2 emails to. I send one at the very beginning of the day of the things that I have on my calendar and what I'm looking to accomplish. And then I report back to that person at the end of the night. And remember, like, I own the company. And so, anyone that's listening, you're not, I don't think, special enough to not need accountability or, have an accountability coach or partner. And then I report back to that person to say, hey, this was done, this was pushed, this was this. And I give a status update on all of the things that I said I was going to do. And for me, that's been impactful because, we're used to, I don't want to say like letting ourselves down often, but it's easier to let ourselves down. And it's a little more difficult to tell someone, hey, Jeremy, this is what I'm going to get done today. And then to report back to you to say, hey, so this is actually what got done today. There's been many, 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 many times just in the last week that it's kept me going another 30 minutes or whatever to get more done because I said I was going to do it. So Covey does it great and says it great. And then an accountability partner is always great. It's why there's coaches out there that can help see things that maybe you can't or are unable to see.
I love that. An accountability partner. It creates a little pain if you have to report back that you didn't finish something. And the last thing I want to say, Austin, is thank you. And if and when it's out there, I want everyone to check out the eMyth Pest Control Contractor, why most pest control companies don't work and what to do about it, that Austin co-authored with Michael Gerber. So if you're listening to this and is out, if not, I'm sure it'll be out soon. Check it out. Check out more episodes of the podcast. And Austin, thanks for having me.
Hey, you too. Thanks a lot, Jeremy.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.